Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. In this one, I'm taking a look at Ghost Rider's latest uniform for the Savage Adventures update. Ghost Rider's previous uniform was the seasonal uniform, and it honestly was one of the best uniforms I've ever reviewed. It took him from being a useless character to being meta in PvE, PvP, and even a top tier striker. The only real downside with that previous uniform was that it was a seasonal, so not everyone had access to it. So the major benefit with this one is obviously that everyone can have access to it if they have the crystals to purchase it. Usually when a character gets a new uniform, they get improved across the board, but that doesn't necessarily seem to be the case with Ghost Rider. His kit didn't fundamentally change from what it was before or drastically become different. He basically got some nice improvements for PvP. He got super armor, a defense increase, an iframe on the 4th skill, and a shorter cooldown on it, so all of those are great, but it isn't entirely clear if he is significantly also better in PvE. And because he went from a premium or seasonal uniform to a regular one, there's a chance that he does become a little bit worse in certain situations. So that's basically what I'm going to be looking at in this video, is how he does in PvE, PvP, and as a striker, and the most ideal builds for those specific cases. So because I already have the character fully built up and tier 4, I couldn't take him into the typical tests I do when I upgrade the characters. So instead I went to stage 78, which is the highest that I've unlocked currently, of Kang, and tested out the old uniform first to see how it would compare to the new one. And with that, I wasn't able to complete this stage, but I did get down to the last 5 health bars when time ran out. With the new uniform, I was able to essentially get to the same health bar mark. I was able to take down an additional bar of health before time ran out, so the difference seems to be pretty negligible. But the other factor to keep in mind here is that the rotation for Ghost Rider's previous uniform was pretty straightforward, and players had a lot of practice with it, whereas with this new uniform, the most ideal rotation isn't kind of ironed out yet, and people still need a little bit of practice with it. So it is very possible that this new uniform is better in PvE once people get familiar with it a little bit more, including myself, of course. In terms of the rotation, I didn't really use the suggested one from the game. The one that I went with, and the one that people were also suggesting that seemed to be better because you get to use your skills more often to minimize the kind of downtime that you're not doing damage, and also be able to spam your tier 4 and your tier 3 more often, is to go with a rotation where you open with the 5th skill, immediately cancel it, go into your 3rd and delay cancel it after he slams down the chains, and then you finish off with the 4th skill. And you obviously want to also use the 1st and 2nd skill and cancel that often to fill up your tier 3 and tier 4 faster. When you have access to the ultimate skill, you use that at the start and you delay cancel it after the visuals or the chains kind of appear, and then you just go back into the same regular rotation of 5 cancel, 3 delay cancel, 4. Keep in mind that you might not be able to do this same rotation every time because of the way the cooldowns are structured, so it might end up that you also do the 3 delay cancel and then do the 5 and 4. So just kind of see what's available to you at the time to determine what rotation you want to do. And obviously when you get your tier 4 skill, just use that before your rotation so you can get the striker damage and fill it up faster to use again. I tested out 3 different CTPs for Ghost Rider's PvE build and took him into stage 19 of World Boss Legend Thanos to see how they would compare to one another. The first one that I tested was a brilliant CTP of Rage, and with that I was able to complete the fight with about 2 minutes and 40 seconds remaining. The second one that I tested was a brilliant CTP of Judgment, which allowed me to clear the stage about 10 seconds faster than the brilliant CTP of Rage, finishing with about 2 minutes and 50 seconds remaining. And then for the final build, I tested out the brilliant CTP of Competition, and that allowed me to clear the same stage about 15 seconds faster than the brilliant Judgment, and about 25 seconds faster than the brilliant Rage. So it seems that for most players, the Competition CTP will outperform the Judgment, which outperforms the Rage, but this might actually change in very high stages of World Boss Legend, where the CTP of Rage's top effect might actually outperform the Judgment, so you do have to take these results with a grain of salt. And one of the reasons why the Competition CTP is likely better than the Rage CTP is because Ghost Rider doesn't have any guaranteed crit, so the competition CTP allows him to proc more reliably and perform better overall in that regard. The other thing I tested was which of these CTPs allows him to perform better as a striker with the new uniform. To do this, I basically waited 4 minutes in a World Boss Legends stage for the tier 4 skill to fill up passively, so that I hadn't done any damage on the boss's health bar, so I could see outright just how much damage one activation could do. With the Brilliant Rage equipped on Ghost Rider as a striker, he was able to take off about 1.25 health bar. With the Brilliant Judgment equipped, he was able to do about 2 health bars of damage, or about half to 3/4 more damage than the Brilliant CTP Rage. With the Brilliant Competition equipped, he was able to do about 3 health bars of damage, or about 1 health bar more than the Brilliant Judgment could. So it's clear that the Brilliant Competition was the best of the options, so the next test I did was to see how the new uniform compares to the old one as a striker, and it appears that the old uniform still outperforms as a striker since it was able to do about 3 health bars of damage and 1/4. It is a very slight difference, but it does end up adding over time, especially if you use him in things like point-based modes like ABX and ABL. It's also worth mentioning that I noticed the 4th skill on the old uniform does seem to have a little bit better tracking when the opponent moves around, so it does end up being a little bit more consistent for that. If you do use the character in ABX, I tested the old uniform compared to the new one using a Brilliant CTP of Rage. With the old one, I was able to score around 14.9 million, and with the new uniform, I was able to score around 15.1 million. And at first, I thought that the new uniform would perform worse in ABX and ABL because it seemed to have less hits, but I think it's more so that those hits aren't necessarily all connected like they are with the seasonal uniform. But overall, he might have the same number of hits, if not more, and potentially more damage. But again, with the rotations, it's kind of hard to tell right now, but at the very least, he performs just as well, if not a little bit better. On the ABL side, I was able to score around 11.5 million with the old uniform, and with the new one, I was able to score a little bit over 12 million. I don't necessarily think I had the best kind of run on the first one, so I think it was a little bit closer like the ABX run was, but again, it does seem that the new uniform does outperform the old one, even to a slight degree, if not more, after a little bit more practice. You do have to take these results with a grain of salt, because again, the rotation is a little bit tricky, but with the Brilliant Competition, I was able to score essentially the same as I did with a Rage, though in theory I should technically score more, but I would need to do a lot of runs to verify this. Just doing 1 or 2 runs can give you an idea of how he performs, and to me it seems like they are pretty close to one another. On the PvP side, I primarily tested 2 CTPs because the character just hasn't fundamentally changed. I tested out a Brilliant CTP of Conquest and a Brilliant CTP of Greed. I tested out the Conquest first to see just how the character did with it with the old uniform. As you can see, it's not really that viable with the premium or the seasonal uniform because the 4th skill has a longer cooldown, it doesn't have iframes, and it doesn't really do enough damage versus stronger opponents that can basically lock him down and not allow him to use that iframe ignore skill. With the new uniform though, you do get that extra protection with the iframe. You also can use the skill more often, so it does become a little bit more viable since he does also have the damage to take out some of the stronger characters if you build him well enough. But regardless, the character doesn't get enough survival from this uniform to make the Conquest just a massive upgrade over something like the Greed, for example. I previously had a CTP of Greed on Ghost Rider and swapped to Conquest just to test it out with the new uniform, but I still feel that the Greed is the most ideal option for Ghost Rider in PvP, especially versus the top meta characters who have a lot of survivability. With the damage proc from the Greed, I was able to take out Sentry's first life almost instantly. Because he doesn't get any damage increases versus non-villain types, the CTP of Greed really helps him versus that. And then because of the immortality effect and the extra survivability and kind of effects to keep him from getting locked down with the new uniform, having the iframe on the 4th skill, as well as the super armor and the extra defenses, On top of also having the shorter cooldown on the 4th skill, it allowed me to also take out Sentry's 2nd life, as well as also taking out the 1st life of Null as well. So you can see that with the Greed, I was able to get as far down into the team list as Null's 2nd life, but with the Conquest on the other hand, I was only able to make it to Sentry's 2nd life, and then kind of just stood around trying to survive and struggling to take out his 2nd life. Another thing I tested with Ghost Rider's new uniform is how his kit interacts versus characters that have Reflect. The initial test that I did was with a Brilliant Conquest on the old uniform, just to get an idea of the difference. You saw on that one that he instantly lost all of his health in the first attack, whereas in this second clip with the new uniform, because he goes into iframe, he avoids all that reflect damage in the beginning, but he still has a lot of AoE or kind of damage that he leaves on the ground, so he is still fairly susceptible to reflect damage regardless of that change to the 4th skill. But if you do go with the Conquest build, he does become more reliable versus Reflect characters specifically, because he gains that full immunity occasionally with the top proc of that CTP. You can see that even with the Greed build, because that 4th skill is an iframe, he avoids all the reflect damage in the beginning, but the skills following aren't iframes, so he takes a ton of reflect damage afterwards. The Greed CTP top proc can also give you immunity to reflect damage, but oftentimes it's not really as useful as the Conquest, because you also are dealing a ton of damage from the bottom procs, where you get all of that damage reflected back to you, and you're often taking out the opponent. Whereas with Conquest, you're basically also getting the healing and other things to stay alive, to activate that top proc and get that immunity to reflect when you really need it. You can see that versus this particular team, ones that reflect, the Conquest did perform better since I got further into the team, but I still test that the CTP of Greed is the more ideal option overall, since it benefits him in more situations. So the first benefit that I noticed with Ghost Rider's latest uniform is that he is much more consistent in taking out at least the 1st life of Null. With the old uniform, Null would often attack him and interrupt the 4th skill, and the cooldown would be so long even if you had a 6-star artifact and had the max duration for the immortality effect, the cooldown was still long enough that you wouldn't be able to use it again. However, with the latest uniform, the cooldown is shorter and you are able to use it again even after getting interrupted the first time, allowing you to take out the full health of Null because of that huge damage increase on the 4th skill. This little cooldown change actually goes a long way in modes like Alliance Conquest, because once you burn the 1st life of Null, when he goes into the 2nd fight, he doesn't have that immortality activation again. He basically just ends up dying, so you can just clean it up with whatever other character that can take out a single life of Null. If you were thinking that Ghost Rider was only able to take out Null's full health because it was a one-on-one fight, if there was other characters like supports or other characters to lock him down, he wouldn't be able to do that. I did another test, this time with a lot of villain characters just stacked up to see if he could just break through all of that and take out all of them. That's basically what he did. Just a single character can take out all the villain characters in Alliance Conquest on the first team, then the second team can just clean up whatever's left if he doesn't survive. I would never recommend using Gladiator versus Null or to clean up this fight, but I was just kind of rushing at this point and was really surprised when he was able to do that. So hopefully if we get a Gladiator rework and get an iframe ignore on him, he would actually be pretty crazy. One of the reasons why I recommend Greed over Conquest is because I found that the Conquest didn't really improve his survivability significantly enough where he could potentially survive a fight entirely and win it outright. One of the reasons for this, amongst the other ones that I mentioned, is that with the new uniform, the 5th skill doesn't provide healing right away, so if your 5th skill gets interrupted, then you don't get any healing at all. And you can see what I mean in this kind of slowed down clip here. He'll activate the 5th skill, but he doesn't get the healing till maybe a second or so after the skill activates. I also noticed that even if you run a Conquest build versus characters like Surfer, he still struggles to fully survive against him because his other skills deal so much AoE damage that he'll still take a bunch of reflect back after you take out Surfer's first life. You can see the same thing happens when I did an experimental team in Team Battle Arena. He was able to take out the first life, but because of all of the AoE and lingering damage on the ground, he immediately died right after because of the reflect damage on Silver Surfer's revive. Again, you can see the subtle value that the new uniform provides with that extra survivability and the shorter cooldown on the 4th skill, because I was able to take out a sentry just with Ghost Rider by himself, obviously with the help of Hela support. I obviously still ended up losing this fight, but it kind of puts into perspective the improvements and the value that you can get from them. So that pretty much showcases the differences between the seasonal uniform and the new uniform. For people who don't have the seasonal uniform, then this one is pretty much a must get, because Ghost Rider is a great character for PvE, PvP, and as a striker, as you saw. So if you don't have the seasonal uniform, this is the easiest way to get a new great functional character. But if you do have the old uniform already, I don't think that it provides a significant enough of a difference for you to immediately go out and get it, unless you're really into PvP, and specifically modes like Alliance Conquest, where you reliably want to take out the first life of any character so that you can potentially clean them up with the second team that you have. I'm not sure if his value will be that great in Team Battle Arena. It might help out get some wins that you normally wouldn't get if you use Ghost Rider, but then again, I'm not even sure if you would want to use Ghost Rider on any particular team, depending on the bans and things that usually rotate around there. In Otherworld Battle, oftentimes Ghost Rider is used there, maybe at the end when everyone is banned, so that might be something to consider if you want to push higher there, but that is pretty much what the new uniform provides. More value in PvP, not really much value as the seasonal uniform in PvE, especially as a striker. You want to use the seasonal uniform since it does provide a little bit more of an edge. So sorry for the people that have to keep swapping back and forth. That does it for this one. I'm not entirely sure if I'm going to be making a video for Dr. Voodoo or for Black Knight. Black Knight is just a decent support. He doesn't have penetration, so he can't really do that much outside of that. And Dr. Voodoo is actually a pretty decent character, but I'm trying to save up materials, because it is very likely that the next video I will do is for tier 4 Mephisto if he is the next one up. Hopefully this video helped you out, whether to pick up Ghost Rider's new uniform or not, or how to build him for the different game modes. But regardless, if you did find the video interesting or useful, please consider liking, sharing, and subscribing. If you can share this video with other people, that would be really great. It would help my channel grow and I can make more videos like this. As always, I really appreciate people taking the time to watch my videos, so thank you. But the video's now over.